Okay, yes, let's get started. Thank you everybody for coming to join us this evening, and I believe the people from China and from maybe west part of the continent, from Vancouver and from maybe west of the US as well. Thank you for joining us in this afternoon, this morning, or this evening here. Okay, so just a brief introduction about me. I'm Ming, and I'm actually the vice principal of Upswing Academy, and we have been running this so-called 学神来了. Okay, this seniors coming your way. Okay, this webinar for the last three weeks, and we have been introducing graduates from US, UK, and to share with us their experience, their learnings through high school, college, university, and even a postgraduate and career as well. So today, actually, we have two graduates from the States, and actually the theme for today is really the university learning, education, and your career. Okay, so let me briefly introduce our two honored guests here today. And well, actually, we haven't decided who start first, right? Okay, so first, I will introduce both of them, and you can always ask the questions in the chat window if you like. Okay, so first one is Elaine. Elaine, can you just wave your hand to our audience? Okay, hi, Elaine. So Elaine is graduate from the University of Pennsylvania, and with a major of economics, right? Economics, yeah. And she's actually working with Facebook right now. Oh, that's an interesting change. She actually worked at restaurants in Miami, and also has been working as a marketing consultant in a firm in New York. Okay, that's Elaine, and maybe you'll talk first. Would that be okay? Okay, the next one is Marion. Okay, Marion is graduate from Dartmouth and college in 2013, and she majored in international economics. She actually worked with Abercrombie and Finch. I think a lot of college students like that brand. Okay, very muscular and very fashion, and also very affordable, I would say. Okay, and also Bloomingdale's and Rose as a merchandiser and buyer. Okay, so that's also a kind of change, right? You know what you are studying and what you're doing right now. So, okay, so we'll get started. I give the floor to our guests, Elaine first. So Elaine will start talking about your own experience, okay? So Elaine, you can unmute yourself, yes.
Okay, great, thank you for the introduction. I might repeat a little bit of what you said, just going over my background briefly. So as was already said, I did graduate from UPenn in 2014 with a major in economics. So it's been about 6 years now. After graduation, I worked at Restaurant Brands International. So just giving a little more detail about that, that's actually the parent company for some well-known chain restaurants such as Burger King, Popeyes, things like that. And the headquarters is in Miami. So I was there for a year before I moved to New York, where I worked in marketing consulting. After that, I've been at Facebook basically 2 years. My 2-year anniversary is coming up this month, actually. And it's been great there. So moving into some more detail about UPenn itself, the undergrad program consists of 4 schools. So there's the standard College of Arts and Sciences, there's the engineering school, the Wharton School of Business, which I'm sure many of you have heard about its acclaimed business programs, and the nursing school. Penn is centrally located in Philadelphia. It's right by the city center, and it's about a 2-hour drive to New York, which is great because it opens up many opportunities for internships and full-time positions in a wide variety of industries. So what I would say about Penn is that it is described as a pre-professional school, even regardless of major. So you'll find that most students are very focused on nailing the most prestigious internships and full-time jobs. And there can be a little bit of pressure in terms of competition when you are at school. For example, applications to even just become a member of a club or organization at Penn can be as rigorous as that of a job, and they can be very choosy when selecting members as well. So I'd like to share some thoughts and reflections on general undergraduate studies as well as career, which I'll break into 2 phases. So for school, I'll focus on joining clubs and organizations. I think that one significant area of growth personally for me was developing an openness for trying out different organizations during my tenure at Penn. So I actually was a transfer student. I went to the University of Miami my freshman year. So after transferring as a sophomore, it was a little difficult to find that same kind of network and connections that freshmen may have gotten, you know, from that extra year. And I would say that at first, attending these club meetings and such kind of felt like an impersonal type of interaction, a little more distant, but I quickly learned that honing these types of skills were essential for forming a professional network, especially since those peers at Penn are definitely very talented, very smart. And I will say that when I looked at jobs further in my career, it was very beneficial to have, you know, that kind of professional network, connections that were open to kind of referring me to different positions and very beneficial in the interview process. So kind of on the flip side, in terms of areas where I would have gone back and changed, I would say that study abroad is something that I wish I would have done. So initially my kind of train of thought around study abroad was that I didn't want to do it because I felt like I already missed a year on the Penn campus since I was a transfer student and I would only have, you know, 3 years instead of the standard 4. So I felt that I needed to stay on campus to both build more connections, and I also felt there was some financial pressure in terms of paying for a study abroad program, even just, you know, the flights and the lifestyle there. But after I graduated and heard about so many good experiences from other friends and peers that had taken that abroad program, and they've made really good connections, were immersed in the culture there, and developed language skills, I felt that I did miss out on an incredibly valuable experience. So I would definitely recommend that future college students take that study abroad program seriously, and I would definitely recommend going for it. All right, so that is, those are kind of my top reflections around undergraduate experiences. And I'll move on to some thoughts about professional careers. So while I've had 3 jobs in 3 different companies, one kind of rule sticks out in my mind, which is the golden rule, the basic principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think it applies universally across all disciplines. Whether you're working with different types of colleagues, clients, someone that's higher than you or someone who is kind of your analyst, you want to treat them respectfully and patiently, even if you're just starting out in your career, if you're in the middle of it, or if you're on the top. It's a kind of a foolproof way to build a great reputation, and that'll extend to all future opportunities and just be beneficial kind of in all aspects. Another kind of tip that I have received from others and exercised myself is kind of staying alert and keeping your eyes and ears peeled for opportunities, even if you aren't actively looking. So basically staying up to date on your LinkedIn, what your professional network is doing, if there are opportunities in your field, if you're maybe even thinking about pivoting and wanting to take on a new skill set, just staying kind of active and up to date on that piece is very important. Interviewing skills are definitely not like riding a bike. If you aren't continuously practicing brushing them up, you'll likely lose them and have to start from the ground up, which can be difficult if you land an interview for a dream position and you're just not ready because you haven't exactly been preparing and you've kind of lost that skill set. So that's kind of one other career tidbit I had to share. And finally, I have just some more general advice and suggestions for high school students. And I would say there are 3 kind of tenets or principles that I would tell my past self and just any current high school students. The first one being just exercise general openness. This applies to your present and future at your college, wherever you end up going. I would say trying out new things, talking to new people, and opening your worldview to those different from you is so important. College is the most free time you're going to have to experience such a large swath of both diversity of ideas and diversity of cultures. You're likely not going to have this opportunity to kind of open your mind to all these different people once you do enter the professional world, since everyone's going to be occupied by work and kind of have that as their main focus. While you're in the college environment, it's such a great time to have different types of discussions that you might have not had in your high school and attend different events that you may just not have had exposure to wherever you're coming from in your old city, in your old town. And having that opportunity to learn is very, very invaluable. The second thing I would say is that it's not all about the brand name school. This is something I would especially tell myself because I feel like I really focused on this in high school. And so anything less was a huge disappointment to me. And I think that affected me a lot. I think that in general, if you are trying your hardest and you have true interests, you're going to succeed wherever you go. And kind of that hyper competitiveness can be hard mentally, and it can kind of affect all parts of your life if you're too focused on one specific name, one specific school. So it's really just all about your mindset, and you're going to be successful if your mindset is in the right place. And then the last piece I would give here is to pursue your interests. So that's kind of tied into the previous point that I was mentioning. So even if you're pressured by your parents, or maybe all your friends are being doctors, or everyone's going in the same path, just focus on what you're passionate about. I would definitely suggest, if you see a class that interests you, even though you've never really thought about it before, I would say go ahead and take that class if you have room in your schedule. It could totally be a new avenue for your future, and could potentially turn into a great career opportunity for you. So I guess it also relates back to the be open piece, but don't just stay stuck in one kind of set mindset, even if you're receiving pressure too. Because if you're just doing something because you're forced to, you're not going to be as successful as you would be in something that you really care about. So I think that is it from my side. I'm looking forward to kind of hearing both Marion's overview of her school and career, and then answering any of the questions at the end. So thanks for everyone who organized this event and the opportunity to share.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, what I learned is basically two things here out of what you share with us. Number one is really to be open, right? The openness in all the possibilities. You want to try new things. You said like you were feeling regret that you didn't go for a study abroad program, right? And also you were sharing with everyone trying new things. That's really like keep yourself open, trying new things, new opportunities, maybe taking smaller risks to just try new things, right? So that's number one. I would say number two is really pursuing like what you said, what really interests you, what you really want to do, and don't be regret after 2 years later say, hey, I should have done that, right? So yeah, I always say that's the two of my takeaways. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so next one is Marion, and would you like to share your screen and can do that?
Oh, you want me to share my screen?
Yes, if you can.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Can everyone see this? Okay. So hi, I'm Marion. I think Elaine and I probably had a little bit different college experiences, but I think ultimately a lot of what our, I think hindsights are probably also very similar. So I graduated from Dartmouth College in 2013. I also majored in economics. So mine was a little bit different. It's economics modified with like an international track. So at Dartmouth, you can modify your major. So you can pull kind of two different majors and make it into one instead of double majoring in things. And I've, after graduation, kind of just worked in retail, which is also unrelated to my major. I worked in merchandising at Abercrombie and Fitch, and then I worked at Bloomingdale's, and I now work at Ross Dress for Less as a buyer in storage. But I can kind of go back and talk about my college experience. So unlike Penn, Dartmouth is not really pre-professional school. I would say the school is kind of similar to the College of Arts and Sciences at Penn. So it's a bigger focus on liberal arts. I think the most popular majors were economics and government. There actually is an engineering school that you can take classes at as an undergrad, and you can get your Bachelor of Science in Engineering, where everyone else gets a Bachelor of Arts. But I think it's a pretty small school. The bulk of the people end up majoring in a liberal arts major. But I think kind of how I mentioned how you can modify your major, you can kind of be a little bit creative with your major at Dartmouth. I had a couple friends who did, they basically created their own major. So you can submit a proposal, kind of propose the classes that you want to take, the structure that you want to take, who your, I think, professor mentor will be, and you can submit to the school to get it approved to create your own major of what you'd want to study. But since there are only basically the main college, the school is pretty small. It's, I think, just over 4,000 students across 4 years. So your class sizes are pretty small. I think the intro classes are probably the biggest classes, around like 100 people. And then once you get to your senior seminar classes, my senior seminar was only 8 students. So you get to know your professors very well across the 4 years. Unlike Penn, it's also not in a big city. It's in a very small college town. So the town basically exists because the college is there. There are no, there's not really any like chain stores. I think my senior year, they opened the Starbucks. I think it's still there, but there's really only like very local stores and very local restaurants. You won't find a lot of stores that you would normally see in any other major city. But I think that kind of lends itself to the culture of the school. So I think it depends on what you're looking for in college, whether you want to be in a big city or if you want kind of really the small college town, and everything is pretty insular within the college town. But Dartmouth is also, I think, a little bit unique because it's also in kind of the middle of nowhere. It's, I think, 5 hours by car to New York. It's 2 hours by car to Boston. And you can walk across the bridge to Vermont, but I think it's much more of a rural town. So actually there's a Dartmouth outing club. So that's a pretty big, or a main draw for a lot of people to go to Dartmouth. You can do hiking, you can do skiing. I think they just do a lot of outdoor trips, and it's just one of the clubs that you can participate on campus. So I think at Dartmouth, that's what drove a lot of people to want to attend the school, was the actual environment that you could be in, because you could hike the Appalachian Trail if you wanted to. This college owns a skiway, so you can learn to ski if you want to. There's a river right on the campus, so you can go canoeing, you can go kayaking. I was on the crew team, so you can do like a lot of different intramural sports that are related to just being in the outdoors, which I think is unique to Dartmouth itself, that a lot of other colleges in larger cities you don't get to experience. Which also kind of tying back to Elaine, that's the one thing I do regret, is I wish I had done a lot more in the outdoors, because now that I live in New York, there's nowhere to really go skiing. There's nowhere to really go hiking unless you drive out a couple hours. So it is like definitely a very special place. And I studied abroad in college. I studied abroad in France. I did French. They have a lot of, Dartmouth itself has a lot of college sponsored study abroad programs, so they can be tied to your major, and it's basically an even transfer of credits, so it makes it a lot easier. I did French just because I wanted to kind of get immersed in the language and like learn the culture. I lived with a family. They only spoke French to me. They kind of cooked me food, and you really get the culture of kind of like, you know, living in a foreign country almost on your own, except with a couple, like I think in my study abroad, there were maybe 15 people. So you really kind of get immersed into it. They definitely have English speaking ones. I think a couple of my friends did one in the Galapagos Islands, and that was like environmental studies. They did economics was in Milan. So that was all in English. It wasn't in Italian. But if you do a language focused one, you will be living with a family in the language country that you're choosing. Sorry. And then I think the most unique thing about Dartmouth is that it actually is on a quarter system, not a semester system. So you have fall, winter, spring, and summer. And your sophomore summer, you have to stay on campus and take classes. And then basically you can have a displaced summer like anytime else in the term. So I was on my sophomore summer, and then I took off and I interned in New York my junior fall, kind of in place of it. So it kind of just gives you like a different time to do an internship, where everyone's kind of competing in the summer to get an internship. You can take one during your junior fall and get like a different type of experience. And then, let's see, I think that's probably the bulk majority of that's unique to Dartmouth. In terms of kind of my experiences, I think in college, like I said, I wish I'd taken more advantage of being in the outdoors. I think you kind of take it for granted a little bit. You're thinking about studying. There's a lot of, it is, to Elaine's point, that probably the only time in your life where you'll have that much free time that you kind of need to learn how to manage yourself. And going from high school, where, you know, your classes are pretty regimented. You have to show up to school, and then you go to class that's timed, and then you leave school. And when you go home, you're kind of doing your homework, and then you kind of wake up and do it again. In college, it's very different. You can be taking classes at different times every single term, and it's you're the one who has to manage your time. So a lot of times I think if that's, I mean, it's the first time you're doing it when you go to college, you kind of, there's so many things pulling you in different directions. You want to join different clubs, you want to do different extracurriculars, you're meeting new people, trying to make friends, but then you also have classes. So I think freshman year, I think it's a good way to kind of figure out, like, try all these different things and kind of hone into what you think ends up being the most interesting, and then take your time to kind of focus in on those activities. I think I ended up probably focusing on the wrong things, to Elaine's point, because you're still learning everything as you're in college, because that is what college is, like a pretty big like personal learning experience. But I definitely wish retrospectively that I'd spent more time outdoors. Like the school had a golf course, so you could take golf classes if you want. They owned the skiway, so you could take skiing classes. There was a lake a couple hours away, so you could learn how to sail in the summer if you wanted to. The college also owned an organic farm, so you could learn how to, I guess you could learn about sustainable farming practices like hydroponics and actually like farm. So I did take an organic farming class one year. So it was pretty cool, but I think like the school is right off the Appalachian Trail. Like there are just so many more things that once you leave the college world, you realize, wow, kind of New York is a lot of streets, a lot of cars, a lot of subways. You kind of really probably won't get that kind of experience for 4 straight years of your life again. So that's probably my biggest regret from college, but I think, I mean, life is about like retrospective, right? But I think career-wise, in terms of like tying career and college, career to college, Dartmouth, I think like most other like Ivy League schools, there are firms that recruit at the colleges. So even for that junior fall term that I had, a lot of companies where there are a lot of Dartmouth graduates, they actually recruit for you to intern during that time frame. I actually ended up finding a job on my own because I was interested in retail and no one else at my school was interested in retail. Everyone was kind of interested in finance or consulting. So I think even an internship even is a great way to figure out what you might be interested in a career, because I think ultimately you don't know until you try. I think you can talk to someone and be like, what do you do in your job? How do you do in your day-to-day life? And think about how you might like that, but there's no way to know, I think, unless you do it. Although I will say for me, I did interview for some finance internships, and then I realized even studying for the internships, I was kind of like, this is pretty boring. I'm not interested in this at all. So I didn't even try to do an internship. But I knew I was interested in retail. So even within retail, I did different internships of different job functions to ultimately end up where I am in my career now. So I think my one summer, I did an internship in PR and social media in fashion. And I was like, I love the environment, but I really don't like social media. I don't really care that much about it. I don't think there's enough like data and analytics. I think a lot of it was timing of posts, and I wanted something a little bit more analytical. So I just kept asking like the people that I worked with, you know, what could be another like job function that could lead me down this path of what I would be interested in. And then I talked to actually a lot of different alumni who worked in retail. So I think actually, I'm not sure, but Dartmouth itself has an alumni network. So you can log into the network with your own information, and it lists basically any alumni who's chosen to be in the network, that their contact information, and you can shoot them an email, you can send them, you can call them, and they will kind of get back to you and talk to you about their career. Sometimes they like offer to shoot your resume off to their company. But I think that was definitely one of the most helpful things, because I talked to a lot of different people who went to Dartmouth who worked in retail, and they actually passed my resume along to get like different internships as well. But I think ultimately, as it led to working, I think even working, a piece of advice I would have is like figuring out what you're looking for in the culture of a company, as well as I think it ties a little bit to the culture of what you're looking for in a school. So I think I was looking for, I'll be honest, actually, in high school, I don't think I even knew what I was looking for. Like, I actually applied early decision to Wharton and I got waitlisted. And then I was talking to an alumni from Dartmouth, and we were just talking about the different things that he enjoyed about Dartmouth. And I realized, oh, actually, this sounds even more interesting to me than what I thought I wanted. Because I think what I thought I wanted was like working in finance, like working in investment banking, and here I am doing the total opposite. And I think throughout college, I realized I didn't want to do that at all. I think I just thought I wanted to do that because a lot of other people were doing that. So I think just talking to people and their experiences and trying to figure out how you might relate to those help you figure out what you might want to do. But I think then ultimately also for your career-wise, the culture of either the school or the company, I think also plays a role into whether or not you'll enjoy kind of the career, because a job ultimately at the end of the day is still a job. It's kind of, are you aligned with the company that you're working for or the school that you end up going to? And then the last piece I think is just the biggest piece of suggestion and advice that I have. I think in terms of when you're going into college, I think I mentioned this a little bit before, college itself is a learning experience. So I think definitely to Elaine and what Ming said, being open-minded. I think a lot of people, I think even my parents, when I was going to college, they were like, you should major in engineering, you should major in like medicine, like something where you can get like a really great job at the end of the day. Where I think you definitely want to go in and be open-minded and figure out what you actually want to learn and what you're interested about learning. Because I would say no one that I went to college with, I don't think any of their careers really relate to what they studied in school. I think the whole point is learning and learning how to learn to ultimately be able to do whatever you want to do in the future. So I think you should take the time to actually learn things that you care about, and then you can like develop yourself as a person and develop what your interests might be, because that's what college is about, basically figuring out what you like, what you don't like, and growing into who you are. So I think at the end of the day, think about what it is you're interested in, not what other people are telling you you should be interested in, and kind of I think that ultimately will help you in the long run. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Wow, okay. Well, actually, you are building on what Elaine was saying, really about following your interests, right? And yeah, and then I think there's another key factor you mentioned is really about learning how to learn, to reflect about your learning, and even go back to high school, university. If we can think about how we are learning and what really attracts us and how we can improve our own learning, that's really can give us better directions for the future. Yeah, okay, thank you. And before we get our audience to ask questions, actually I have 3 questions for you, so don't panic, and I'll try to make it easy. Okay, so the first question is about, well, okay, technology is evolving, and I think, what if like one day somebody say, maybe Musk says, oh, I have a time machine, I can send you back all the way to your high school times. And well, luckily you win the lottery and you got a ticket, and you can you travel all over, I don't know, 6 years, 5 years, or whatever. Okay, maybe only just 1 year, right? Okay, so go back and what would you say to yourself? So you are in high school right now. Yeah, what would you say to yourself?
For me, I think it would be don't put so much pressure on yourself. I think ultimately things will turn out the right way. I think, like I told you, I applied early decision to a different college and I went to a totally different one, and I absolutely enjoyed the experience. I think life is a little bit about what you make of what happens in life, right? Versus kind of letting life happen to you and be like, oh no, this is what's happening, and not kind of taking advantage of it. So maybe you didn't end up in your dream school, which to me, I'm now like, the school that I went to was actually my dream school. So it ended up working out for me, and kind of not stressing too much about all of that. Kind of life will work out as long as you kind of figure out what you might kind of figure out what you're most interested in, like how you can grow as a person.
Okay, well, let me just clarify on that point. When you say to yourself, no pressure, what do you mean? Are you trying to say no pressure, just buy all kinds of fancy clothes, join the parties, and just enjoying your time and play? Or you mean something else?
Probably like a little bit of both. I think like in high school, I probably put a lot of pressure on myself. Like I had to get into like X school, like that I needed to, because to me that was like the ultimate goal. But I think when you like think back on life, you're kind of like, what is that goal, without, you know, the meaning of what you want to do to get there. I think even if you think about celebrities and something, like say they win an Oscar, what happens after that? Like what is the ultimate like meaning that you're looking for? So I think it's like a mix of both. Yeah, you want to learn and study, and in order to learn you have to study, but also, you know, in college I think some of my best friends I ever made were out of college. So I think, yeah, going out there, being social, meeting new people, to Elaine's point, like it is one of the places where it's like people are always like thinking, people are in different dialogues that doesn't necessarily happen in the working world, because you're focused on, you know, the tasks that have to get done for work. Whereas in college, everyone is kind of like thinking, you can hear different people's ideas and their different way of thinking and their different perspective. Like people, I think, come from different places that I never experienced in high school. I think there are people that were international students from like Africa, from China, even from Australia, from New Zealand, from South America, that I think just opens your eyes to something different. So definitely also, like while you're studying, take advantage of that as well.
So can I say that actually when you say no pressure, actually means just besides just focusing on your study, your work, actually you should look out beyond that, looking at what your interests are and getting to know people and to interact with other people and to know a little bit more about things outside your study, outside your curriculum. So that's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, definitely that. And maybe the ultimate is like, don't have such a narrow definition of what success is, right? Because that's what the pressure probably is. It's like you want to be successful, but it could be in a very broad sense.
Yeah, exactly. So we should really beyond a success does not mean you get a good score, that's a good success, or you get a very high-end, high-paid job, that's a success. There are many other success around beyond that, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. How about Elaine? You got anything to add on to that? What would you say to yourself, actually, first question?
Honestly, I think it would be very similar to what Marion said. I think when you're at that age, you can have a very fixed idea of what you think success is and what you envision for yourself going to this perfect school and getting the most amazing job. And most times it doesn't work out like that. But it oftentimes does work out that you still will be successful and you'll be very happy with how it turned out, even if it's not perfectly linear, you know, A to B to C, the way that you think it's going to turn out. So I would definitely tell myself that. I'm sure some people told me that, but I was stubborn and I didn't listen. So honestly, I don't know if I could convince myself, but that is something I would say. Being open-minded is harder when you have, you know, less age and experience in the world. But it is what is true about, you know, actually going through these experiences and learning that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we probably, I mean, both of you probably share that thing in common. Really keep it open and try new things. Because I mean, eventually nobody really knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And nobody would tell you whether today's decision, well, what will end up with like 3 days or 3 years later. So we all have that kind of uncertainty. But if we keep ourselves open and trying new things and prepare ourselves, that's probably the best thing we can do. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the second question. And the second question is still more related to your high school or college. And if you're looking back, and what are the critical skills, knowledge you think you've learned that really helps you in your current career or your current lifestyle, whatever? How would that high school or college learning contribute to your current status? Yeah.
I can answer first. I think for me, college was probably learning how to learn. I think in high school, you kind of ended up being like, oh, you're kind of, everything was a little bit like rote, very technical, a lot of memorization, not that you weren't learning, but I think for me, high school was a lot easier than college was. High school was kind of like, you show up to class, you can kind of actually read the textbook and know what's going to be on the test, and you can kind of not pay attention to the rest of the class. I think for me in college is a lot more difficult. It wasn't like, for example, like a history class. I think in high school, you're learning actual facts. In a college history class, you're reading firsthand accounts of certain events and trying to interpret from that different people's perspective about what happened at that moment in time in history versus just regurgitating, oh, in 1776, this is when like the US was founded, XYZ. Maybe you're reading someone's letter as all of the things were happening to understand what was happening in that moment in time. So I think for me, college is actually a great place to figure out how to learn. So I think how that applies to my job now, like I think my job is much more technical than anything I ever did in college. I didn't take a single Excel class, didn't take an accounting class, all my classes were kind of like in theory. Even the economics classes, those were all economic theory. They were never really applied to anything. So I think in the working world now, a lot of the skills I didn't learn, but I learned how to teach myself how to, you know, do different formulas in Excel, like pivot tables and summits or whatever, that I kind of learned how to teach myself how to do in college.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I would say that actually in the Chinese, we have an old saying says something like, the master leads you to the door, right? and then you figure it out. And then basically the college is showing you some directions, giving you tools, and then you learn from that. And then, I mean, all this technical stuff, actually you can continue to learn even when you're still working. I mean, like for me, myself, my college major is in English language teaching. I never learned marketing and never learned like computer science, but eventually now I'm doing, it's really all the online marketing and building online e-learning programs. I mean, that's totally, well, I've never learned that. But if you know the skills, you know how to learn, like what you mentioned earlier, that's more critical. I mean, that's really the foundation of your future career, right? Yeah, okay. How about Elaine, you got anything to add?
Honestly, I can, again, echo a lot of the things that Marion said. I mean, we also went to the same high school, so we had a lot of the same shared experiences. In high school, like Marion said, it's a lot easier to kind of just skate ahead and get grades because, you know, you have so many different assignments, so many different tests, and the teacher is really holding your hand and helping you actually learn and gain that knowledge. Whereas in college, you have to learn this actual learning framework all by yourself. There's only going to be 2 tests, maybe 3 homework sets, and everything in between, that's up to you to learn yourself, to actually read the material, to actually go in depth and get the real concepts, not just answering, you know, whatever happened in high school, like little quizzes and lots of different memorization tools that the teachers would kind of ram into your head to get you to memorize. So yeah, I would say college is definitely that time to establish your own ways to learn and create that framework for yourself, because likely, as we both mentioned, your major isn't going to really correlate to what you actually do when you go into the working world. So there's going to be, you know, a lot more things to learn on your job. And if you don't know how to pick up that knowledge, then you're not going to do well. You're going to struggle and fall a little bit behind. So essentially, you know, the same thing that Marion said.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, well, we share some common ideas. That's great. Okay, my last question before I give this to the audience. Well, basically, according to your research, which says like, what, 30 years later or 20 years later, probably like, what, either say 50% of a job or 20% of, or maybe 80% of a job will not exist, right? I mean, probably heard about something similar. And then for your case, especially Marion, you're actually not doing what your major was, right? You were majoring in economics, and now you're ending up doing retails and merchandising, buying. So what would you say to your, I mean, the audience here? I mean, they are facing the opportunity, I mean, the chances to choose their own major probably in the next 12 months. What should they do? And then, as we all talked about before, like nobody knows what you'll really be doing 4 years, 6 years down the road, but how should they make the decision right now? I mean, this is a short-term decision they have to make. And then what would be your advice for them?
I think, so I majored in economics. I guess it's slightly tied to a little bit of my job, since it's the greater, whatever happens in the greater economy affects, you know, how people buy. But I mean, I think there are people that I work with that majored in actual fashion merchandising and buying, and we can do the same job and it's totally fine. And I would say that probably applies to a lot of other people. I think I know people who went into investment banking and they majored in history. I know people who went into consulting and they majored in English. So I think it might seem like the biggest deal, but it ultimately, I think if you are interested in the topic, I think that's more important, because if you're interested in something, you naturally become more involved and you will probably do better in the major just because you want to study and learn about it. I would say even for me, retrospectively, I probably shouldn't have majored in economics. I think as maybe I got into my late sophomore and early junior year, I realized there were a lot of other classes that I thought were much more interesting that I wished I could major in. But at that point, I was kind of like, I'm almost done this major, so I'll just continue this major and then take these classes that I'm interested in on this, like as my secondary classes. But I think career-wise, especially if you're coming out of a liberal arts college or a college that isn't pre-professional, I think the people who interview you know that I think the people who are interviewing you, they probably also didn't major in a major that was related to their career, because especially at Dartmouth, a lot of the people recruiting went to Dartmouth. So they come back, they try to find people to work for their same company. And it's a similar experience where they either majored in history, they majored in English, or something else kind of unrelated. But I think ultimately, as long as you can argue why you would want the job and how you can like pick up things quickly, I think especially since if you're graduating college, you've really never worked before, there's no expectation that I think major correlates to your working world. So don't find something that you think would be, take a lot of different classes, figure out what you think is the most interesting and want to pursue learning more, and make that your major. I think I chose economics because I was like, oh, this will get me a great job I think I'm kind of interested in. And then as I went on in my studies, I realized I was interested in a lot more different things that were totally different, like women and gender studies from economics. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. How about Elaine?
Yeah, I can again echo many of the same things. I think a lot of folks at Penn who majored in various, English, history, political science, econ, still end up doing many of the similar things. It's really not correlated, your job with kind of what you focused on in school, unless it's something like the hard sciences, engineering, or computer science. Otherwise, it's a quite generalist type of major to go for economics. I think I didn't put too much stock into majoring in it because I originally was going to be science focused. My freshman year when I was at the University of Miami, I was, I think, a neuroscience major thinking about physics. But when I transferred to Penn, econ just jumped out as me to kind of be the major that had the best success rate in getting these jobs post-grad. So it was kind of more of a practical move rather than my true interests. And I will think a lot of peers at my age at that time also just didn't really know what they were truly interested in. They didn't have enough exposure to every type of area. So that was just kind of an easy out to pick that major. And everyone also was aware of the fact that recruiters coming to campus, like they look at the economics major and they like it. So kind of casting a wide net for future opportunities was the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think basically it's really keep an open mind and choose, first of all, align with your interests, but it has to be slightly broader interest, not just narrow it down to one particular job. And yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, thank you for all my questions. That's it. I'm not going to bother you. And let's see what our audience have for you. Okay, let me see. Okay, the first question from Ben. Why do you choose UPenn if you have other offers?
Sure. So for me, when I was transferring, I didn't apply to that many schools. I knew I only wanted to go to like a handful of schools. So really it was UPenn or Cornell. And I liked that Penn was kind of more set in a city environment. It was, I mean, I guess they're both close to New York, but I just didn't feel that pull towards Cornell the way that I did with Penn. I had good conversations with, the admissions counselor at Penn, and quite a few people from our high school had also gone there and had great things to say. And I knew that their, pre-professional atmosphere was very strong, and Penn alumni just in general had great success in getting those jobs that I was interested in. So those were kind of the factors around me choosing Penn.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Ben. And let's move on to the next one. And to both of you, why did you choose to major in econ, go into business? Is it just what interests you most, or is there a deeper goal you want to achieve through your work? We kind of touched on that. Do you have anything to add to that question?
I wish there was a deeper goal, but I would say that most econ majors, that it's really the minority that's truly interested in like economics as like a subject and that actually go into, you know, graduate school, PhD in econ. If it is you, that's great. But from my experience, usually people do it more for the practical aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I think I also did it for the practical aspect. Like Elaine said, you kind of cast a wide net. And I think for Dartmouth, there's no pre-professional school. So econ is the most business-related major you can major in. Otherwise, there's no other business-related major. It's like econ, government, like political science, history, like English. It's the only business-related major you can have. So I think going in, I knew I wanted to do something business-related, and then kind of like coming out, I ended up in something business, and yeah, I guess there's no like deeper goal there. I think I was just interested in business going in and kind of currently too.
Okay. Let's see. Next question from Katie. Any tips for choosing major, area of interest? Well, that's a very broad question. If you have anything to share, any tips for choosing a major or areas of interest?
I think you have to take a lot of different classes that might be outside your comfort zone. I think that's really what ended up interesting like me, because I think my first 2 years of college, I kept taking all these, what I thought I was interested in. So it was all these different kind of like economics related classes. And like, to be fair, you also have to hit, because it's a liberal arts education, you have to hit certain requirements. So you have to take math classes, you have to take science classes, you have to take English classes, and you have to take language classes in order to graduate. It's part of the curriculum. So I think I was trying to knock out a lot of these classes in my first couple of years. And then since I wasn't interested in science, I actually ended up taking what I thought would just be easy classes because people told me it would be easy, but I wasn't interested in the subject at all. And I think that was actually to my detriment. I should have just looked at the science like class schedule and be like, this topic is actually interesting to me and I want to take the class, whether or not it's easy or hard, because I think that will kind of lead you into getting a better grade in the class anyway, because I didn't do that well in these quote unquote easy A classes because I just didn't care about the subject topic. So I think part of it is definitely you have to take the classes in order to figure out, do you even like this? And I would say at the beginning, when you're picking classes at the beginning of every term, you can, it's not always like locked in right when you start the term that you're taking these classes. I think you can pick a couple classes and you might even be able to like sit on certain classes to see if you're interested in them before you even register them. Because I think you have maybe 2 weeks before the registrar is like finalized, and these are your classes that you're taking for the term. So you can kind of take a class, maybe see for 2 days and be like, never mind, I don't actually like this class. I'm gonna sign up for a different class instead. The only downfall to that is the classes might all be full because the class sizes are really small at Dartmouth. But I think even if you think you might be interested in something, see if you can like talk to the professor at some point and just be like, hey, can I get your syllabus? I just want to like look at this and see what you might even be teaching in this class and would I be interested in it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Katie can also add on to that question is how you narrowing down on your interests. So anything to share for her? How
like interest academically or interest like in like career-wise or life-wise?
Yeah. Okay, so Katie, you can think about career-wise. Yeah, career-wise.
Career-wise, for me, it was really, I think, a mix of talking to alumni and then a mix of actually doing the jobs themselves. So kind of how I spoke to my first internship was in PR and social media. It was cool because I got to meet a lot of different designers. It was at the CFDA, which hosts the Vogue Fashion Fund, and then also holds the, there's like a CFD Fashion Awards in May. So every basically American major designer is a member of it. So it was managing when Instagram was first in the market. So it was not what it is now, but it was kind of really up and coming, managing the Instagram, like Twitter, like pulling different areas where the designers were like featured. And I was like, this is cool to learn about all these designers, but ultimately I know just doing this job, this isn't what I could see myself doing every single day. I think I just wanted to be challenged a little bit more. So after that internship, I went back to school, but there is I think Penn probably has this too, Elaine can probably talk to that, but there's Alumni Network. It's literally on the Dartmouth. I think now they made a LinkedIn, but LinkedIn was also just starting when I was in college. So wow, I feel kind of old, but there's an online alumni network, and you can search by like industry. So you can search if they work in finance. There was one for retail, and I literally emailed. It lists like their name, their email, it lists their industry, it lists their year, and then it lists like the school. So there's a business school later on at Dartmouth, and then there's also that engineering school, and there's a medical school. So it kind of shows the degrees that they got, and then it lists like the company that they work for. So I ended up emailing and talking to, I think, maybe like 5 to 10 different alumni. And I was like, I did this internship in fashion. I didn't really like it, but I've heard that this is a job and you're actually doing this job. Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? And what do you like about your job and what don't you like about your job? So for my summer internship that junior year, I ended up getting a job that was adjacent, but not the job that I'm doing now. So it was in procurement. So that's basically like, it was for Ann Taylor. So it was like sourcing of all the things that go into the store. So you're bulk buying, say like all the fixtures or all the light bulbs that go into the physical store. So it's kind of like, this is more interesting. You can see the different trends in pricing of like wood materials. If you're buying a table for all the stores, for all Ann Taylors, or like you're seeing just the different like lighting trends and like what's happening to electricity as a total like aggregate. So I was like, it's interesting to see what's happening in the economy and the trend and how that impacts the pricing that we have to do and what that we then need to negotiate with suppliers. But I also don't care about like the wood tables that go into the Ann Taylor store. So then that ultimately led me to what my job is now, which is basically buying the goods that go into the store that people would want to buy. So it was almost like a mix of everything. It was like the social media was the trend where I was like, the trend is cool, but there's kind of not really anything else to this. And then the procurement, I was like, oh, it's great to learn about the analytics, but I don't actually like any of the product that we're quote unquote buying in bulk. And then I've ultimately landed kind of where I am now, where you're buying what someone will see in the store, which to me, I think is really fun. It is basically my dream job.
Okay, Elaine, do you have anything to add?
So the original question was about how to
narrowing down your interests.
Yeah.
Career-wise, yeah.
So I would definitely say make use of your college career center. Since UPenn is so professionally focused, we have an extensive kind of staff at the Career Center who are really, really devoted to helping you build your resume, helping you find your interests, connecting you with our strong alumni network, setting you up maybe with a career mentor, things like that. So I would say every school has some form of that. So utilizing that to its max capacity is a great way to explore that. Another way could be to join different organizations that have either alumni or ties to kind of the same kind of activities that you might do in your future career. There are quite a few consulting type of organizations at Penn. While you're an undergrad, you can essentially perform duties that are similar to what you would do in an actual consulting job in your future career. So if you like that, great, you know that you should start preparing for those kind of interviews to take on those opportunities in the future. So there are really different types of ways to go about that. From personal experience, I would say I kind of spoke to a few people who were older than me that were in different types of fields and got a feel for how they like their career and whether that would apply to me and if I would enjoy doing the same things as well.
Yeah, actually I can also relate that question to one of the guests from last week who's actually in the first year during the summertime, and he just took a part-time job and try it out. And then he went to the lab and feel like, oh my God, that's not the thing I want to do, and totally forget it. So yeah, basically just do it and find opportunity to talk to people. And if got a chance, just do it and try it out. That will tell you whether that interest or not, right? Okay, so let's see. Okay, we have next question here. That's from, okay, this is from iPhone. The Alumni Network of Ivy League is very strong. What effect do you think the influence of classmates has on the future career development? That's from the username iPhone.
Yeah, I agree. The network is very strong. I think even now, I mean, I think it's every network of every type of experience you've ever had, right? So like your high school, Elaine and I went to high school together. So I think if she ever wanted to pivot into retail and work in retail, we could connect and we could touch base, and I could try to give her resources or refer her to my company, or vice versa. If I all of a sudden wanted to become a software engineer or work in tech, I think Elaine could give me some like insight into some of this. So I think it's almost like every point throughout your life, you should maximize on the network that you have. I would say, yes, the Ivy League one is pretty big because you can kind of just connect on the fact that you went to this school, not having met this person at all or know them at all, which is what I did literally when I was looking for internships. I just emailed them from the network. I was like, I found you on the network and I'm currently a student. Like, how can we connect? I would say for your peers, that's essentially like kind of me and Elaine going to high school. I think there are a lot of people that I went to school with I could probably just reach out to on like LinkedIn or Facebook, or text them if I wanted to, or shoot them an email and just say, hey, actually, I think I'm interested in your company. Or I think now at this point in our careers, a lot of it is, I'm interested in like a lot of people that I work in, people that I know from college either work in venture capital or in private equity. So it's a lot of acquiring of different businesses, and it might be retail related. So it's maybe even just like picking your brain, like, oh, hey, like you work in retail, we're interested in buying a retail company. Like, I just want to pick your brain on like what the different functions might be. Or people work at different startups, and it's kind of like, oh, I want to hear about your experience at the startup. Just kind of using them to kind of gain ideas of how you could, I don't know, like benefit or like learn from it.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. And this is from Ben as well. What do Dartmouth College applicants value most?
Like what the college values the most in applicants to Dartmouth?
Yeah.
That's probably, I think, a little bit hard to say. I would say, I think a lot of well-rounded students who have like very clear passions. I think a lot of the people that I went to school with, some people ended up being like professional skiers and skied in the Olympics. Like, it's actually a pretty outdoorsy athletic school. So a lot of people that I went to college with ended up going to the Olympics, and that really was kind of like their lane. I wasn't in that lane. I was kind of more probably like academic focused, but there are people that I think, there are a lot of people at Dartmouth, I think, that had very clear like lanes. They were here, they were really, really great at skiing or like a different sport, and then that's kind of like what they went on to do in their career. I think as long as you show you have a passion and interest in something, and that kind of reflects in your application, I think that's also like what they're looking for. I would say I've like been in alumni interviews. So I've interviewed, it's like one piece of the application where you interview an alumni, and they just kind of like write a little bit of like a report of like, oh, I talked to this person, like these were kind of like the takeaways that I had. I would say it's probably the smallest piece of an application, but the people that stood out the most to me were the people who had like very clear, very unique interests. So there was one girl that I remember talking to. She was at a specifically like science and technology school, but she was really interested in like the arts and plays as well. So she wrote a play for the school's production and then like performed in it with like a bunch of her classmates that she got in order to join. I guess, I don't think it was a drama club. I think it was just like a production that she wanted to put on because she was really interested in that. And the school was a technology school and she didn't really have that outlet. So she just kind of created it herself.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions to go. The question is, what do you enjoy most and least about your jobs? Who would like to take that question? There's always up and downs, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think one, ultimately at the end of the day, like a job is a job. So I think that's probably the least that I like about it. Like they are paying you to do something. So there are some things that you won't want to do. But I think what I really like the most is I think sometimes like the people that you meet. So people kind of, you know, push you to do better, or the people are like really interesting and kind of like create like a fun like job network for you. But I think ultimately I really enjoy what I do on a day-to-day basis. That's what drives me, even on the days where I have to do something that I don't really want to do. I'm like, ultimately, like this job is pretty fun. There's just always going to be some days where you don't want to work.
Okay, so Elaine?
So on the most enjoyable piece, I would say that specifically at my current role, this company is one where I've never worked with such smart and talented people. Compared to my previous two companies, I have a really good manager. The culture is really great. And I just really enjoy working at a company like Facebook. And specifically in regards to my role, I work on political ad policy. So it feels really empowering to be able to work on something that affects such a large user base on a platform that billions of people are using every day. So just kind of having that mission and being aware of that impact is something that I really enjoy and drives me to work as hard as I can every day. For the what I enjoy least, I think this one's hard to answer. I guess have to think about it, but I think there are a lot of like administrative or manual pieces of a job that are going to be apparent in no matter what field or what company you work for. You're going to have to do something by hand that's going to take you like an hour, and you're like, why did I have to do that? Or you have to kind of message someone like 3 times for them to get back to you. Just these small things, that's not going to go away, but everyone kind of has to do it. And so everyone can kind of relate with these like smaller things that are going to be in each job you have.
Well, I thought like a high tech like Facebook may have some certain genius, certain applications just scan and get everything done. No, that's not going to happen.
I haven't heard of them yet. No.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, actually, I like what Marion said just now. I mean, a job being a job itself is something that I don't like, right? To get paid for living, that's the part I hate. Yeah, okay, I get that as well. Okay, so let's move on to the last question. What clubs did you join at high school, and how do they help you think? What kind of club do you join? Like what, debate or whatever, dancing or drama, or what kind of clubs?
I can go first. So yeah. I was in a handful of clubs in high school. Marion was also in some of the same ones as I was. Mu Alpha Theta, which was I think the math one, where everyone was kind of allowed to go to competitions and kind of flex their math knowledge, which was always interesting to kind of have that pressure to prepare and see who came out first versus another spot on the list. I think we were also both in the Science Technology Society. I forget the exact name. I don't know, Marion, if you remember, but that was kind of like a greater umbrella organization where there were smaller science Olympiad teams under that organization, which I was also a part of the chemistry and the physics Olympiad. And kind of doing well in those regional competitions made me originally think I wanted to go into science, which is why at the University of Miami, where I went first, I thought I was going to be a science major, or science related major before shifting and realizing I didn't want to go to grad school and go down that path. So that's kind of something that informed my initial career choice. But I would say the most impactful club I was in was Literary Society. It was, I guess, akin to a book club in high school where we would discuss books and anything related to that. And that's something that's persisted into my career, where I've been part of multiple book clubs since graduating in Miami and now in New York. It's a really good way to kind of have an outlet outside of work and discuss, you know, issues and books that are important to us. I also have my own book club at my work office, so I'm actually in multiple. So I would say that's something that I was interested way back in high school that's been kind of persistent throughout my life.
Yeah, I think Elaine and I were in a lot of the same clubs in high school. I was not in the science one. I have never been interested in science, so I don't know what it's called. But I think we were, yes, both in the math competing one, both in Literary Society. I think Literary Society was probably one of my favorite clubs that I was in as well. I think in general, I think reading was just something I was passionate about, and I think still am passionate about. I think Elaine and I are also in the same book club now. So it kind of just, you know, I think it's part of, you know, kind of tying to the whole like finding your interest. Like high school is a perfect place to even start figuring out what the clubs you might want to be interested in, because they're going to be kind of just general topics of what you might be interested in, to trying to figure that out. But I was also in orchestra. I played the violin. So I think that for me was probably the bigger extracurricular activity that I did that I was the most passionate about. I will say though, going to college, I didn't end up playing. I think a lot of people were a lot more talented than I was once I got to college. And I think from there, I found like different avenues that I was more interested in spending my time in doing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that last question. And actually, when you come in here, do you hear that I was playing a music in the background? Do you hear that?
Yep, we heard it.
Yeah, do you know where it come from? Well, actually, this is from, I'm not sure you heard about this animated movie, The Spirit Away.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is actually the theme song.
Oh.
Yeah.
I should have known that.
Actually, I think this is one of many people's favorite. And the reason I choose it, actually, recently I was browsing through YouTube, and suddenly I found an interesting, a new interpretation about this whole movie. Actually, it says it's all talking about the workplace. So basically, she just have to work hard, right? In that debating housing house, right? You just have to work hard to get a job, and that's how everything. And then his friends have to know you, so then have to become like know you who you are, and then whether you're worthwhile to make a friend. So that's how it's all about. I mean, search YouTube, you'll find it. What interests me is actually at the very end, if you still remember, this little the white dragon was talking to Chi and says, just go ahead and don't look back. Just go straight out of the tunnel and you're back to your normal world, right? So I think that's something also representing our life. I mean, we're making decisions all along. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we have to make decisions. We have to work hard and we have to chase our dream. And then there's no turning back and there's no way to look back. Nobody will know, but as long as we're working hard, we're prepared ourselves, like what we discussed about today, basically two things I hope for the audience to take away. It really is learning how to learn and think about your learning and get the best you can. And it's secondly, it's try new things, meet new people, try different kinds of stuff. Actually, I know a friend who actually drive into a parking lot every day. He said, I have to park at a different place every day. It's kind of crazy, certain people. They want just to do all things new every single day. So I think those are two things for all our audience. You are being a high school student or college, or even some of them I think still in elementary. So follow our friends, our seniors, and who have sharing us all this experience. Thank you so much, and Marion and Elaine, and thank you for your time. And I know you're still traveling, but still make it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. And I hope to see you again next week. And have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks for having us. You too.
Yes, thank you so much.